Thank you everybody for coming to Startup Run tonight. We're going to have Michelle from Co-Advantage open us up.
Thank you, Kim. Welcome everyone to the Startup Run event for December. We're very happy to have you here. My name is Michelle, and I represent this company, Co-Advantage, and we are one of the sponsors for this event. We work with a lot of startup companies, small and medium-sized businesses, and what we do is we are their outsourced HR provider. We integrate payroll with benefits, 401k, and also HR to really help streamline the processes, make it a lot easier for the business owner, and ultimately drive down costs as well. Very happy to have you all here, but really this event is not about me. So I'd really like to turn this over back to Kim so we can start with the fireside chat.
Thanks, Michelle. All right, thank you, Blair, for being here with us today.
You're welcome.
Blair is from a company called Mercury Fund, and let's give him a warm Startup Run welcome. Okay, so we want to learn a little bit about you. So can you talk about your background, your family, and where you grew up?
Sure. So I'm married with 2 kids, 2 daughters, 11 and 7. The reason I bring that up is my oldest daughter, who is 11, has attended 3 demo days, a business plan competition, and a number of startup pitches. She's totally into what I do. And the only reason she figured out what I did was because someone at her school said, hey, have you ever seen Shark Tank? She's like, what is Shark Tank? She's like, I think your dad does that. And so she got home and she's like, you gotta see Shark Tank. And this was 3 years ago, and I was like, oh my God, I hate that show, are you kidding? She's like, oh, watch it with me, Daddy. So that's one of the things, I'll write a passage that we do at the house now. And so she's learned startup math through Shark Tank, but also she has an appreciation for what all of you do. Like, she just thinks it's an absolute blessing that I get to go to work every day and hear about new ideas and new innovations, so it's very cool. But no, so I got my start, I grew up in Massachusetts, and then moved to North Carolina for high school. And I went to undergrad at Washington Lee University, a small liberal arts school in Virginia. And when I graduated, one of the oddities about me being a VC is I graduated in accounting. So I was a CPA with Deloitte Touche, and I went to work in DC for 3 years. And when I went to work in accounting, it was because it was 89, 90 timeframe. And for those of you that were working back then, it was a tough job market. But jobs like accounting were somewhat plentiful. And I always wanted to figure out how cash moved through the system, kind of growing up. And I said, you know what, I'll always be able to find a job as a CPA and I can do what I want to do later. And so I jumped into accounting. I really liked it for the first few years. But for those of you that ever did accounting or auditing, it's a little mind-numbing at first. And a number of my friends stayed on and became partners at the firm. But after about 2.5 years, I thought, I want to do something else. But when I was at the firm, I worked with a lot of startups. I was able to work with startup software companies. And in 1996, my wife got into vet school at Texas A&M. We were dating at the time. She was a native Houstonian. And I figured, you know what, vet school is really difficult to get into. I'm going to follow the brains. I'm going to go down to Texas, and I'll figure out what my next move is career-wise. So I moved to Houston. I wasn't going to live in Bryan College Station because I just didn't know what I would do there. And did investment banking for a few years in the energy space, a lot of mergers and acquisitions. It was interesting learning about the capital markets. But when I was there, I started to learn about private equity and venture capital, a number of energy companies that were getting started, more exploration production companies. But oil was $10 a barrel. I wasn't doing anything but pitching bad ideas of one company trying to buy another company. And so in my spare time, I started volunteering with an organization that had just started up called the Houston Technology Center. And so for those of you that are familiar with Houston, HTC as it's called, is very similar to the ATI, kind of IC squared model here in Austin. So I was one of the first paid employees there. I eventually ran operations. And when I got there, the first week to work, the chairman, which was Lloyd Benson III, the son of former vice presidential candidate, and so forth, senator, he handed me a sheet of the 100 most wealthy people in Houston. And he said, Blair, your job is to form an angel network. Now, I wasn't sophisticated enough to know what an angel network is, right? This is 1999. I don't know many of you knew what an angel network was. I don't think CTAM was formed at that point in time. I don't know if there was one here. So I went out and I started cold calling all these people saying, hey, you're doing all this individual investing on your own. Why not let us look at the startup, we'll give them some guidance, we'll help with their PowerPoint, and then we'll give you a nice breakfast and we'll parade these startups in front of you, and we'll do this for no fee. And some of the people were like, hey, that's great. And others were like, no, I do my own deals. So we put this group together, which was a Houston Angel Network. And so I kind of managed that within HTC for a while. The chairman of that group was a guy by the name of Paul Hobby. Paul, through the Hobby family, he started a venture fund in 2000 called Genesis Park. And because of where I was in my role, I knew a lot of startup companies. Working at HTC, I built a relationship with a number of the early VCs and the Austin community, a number of entrepreneurs. So he pulled me out to basically run bird dog deals for them as an associate. So I worked in that group for 5 years, and that was kind of my apprenticeship to venture capital. And what surprised me was, rather than just making the investment, they would say, okay, what's the thesis for what you want to go do? And I'd say, well, there's this great oil and gas software company. And they said, okay, we'll make the investment. What are they not good at? I'm like, you know what? They can't market. They're just horrible at pitching. So they'd close the investment, they would take the board seat, and they'd throw me into the company for 3, 6, 9 months, part-time, to figure out marketing. Now the problem was, I didn't know marketing, right? So it was trial by fire, time and time again, and then I would hire someone to take my place and do a lot more than I did. But I did that for 5 years. The last company I took over as CEO and sold to a company called IHS before it went public. But I learned a lot about working with entrepreneurs, what it takes in these various disciplines. And so after I sold that company, a good friend of mine who had launched the Rice Alliance, which is probably the largest entrepreneur organization in Houston, he had met the Draper Fisher Jurgensen team. And DFJ at the time was looking to launch a satellite fund in Houston. And so he and I launched DFJ Mercury, which is now Mercury Fund. So this is back in 2005. So if you remember the landscape in Austin in 2005, that was about the time that Austin Venture started to do many more private equity deals than venture deals. They always did venture deals, but they saw the shift, and so they started moving much more up market and much larger deals. So our venture fund, we launched with the thesis that we would basically take up the void left by them in doing seed stage deals. So at that point in time, 05 through 08, we were easily one of the most active venture groups in Texas. Did a number of deals during that time. And then over time, though, what we found in our venture fund was only doing Texas deals was a little bit limiting, because we were forced to do the best deals locally rather than the best deals per sector or per theme. So over time, we opened up the geography of how we invested. So now Mercury Fund, we left the DFJ network this last fund. We now have 3 funds that we manage, about $250,000 in management, $250 million. Our last fund's about $105 million, but we invest all throughout the middle of the country. So we invest everywhere from Houston to Cleveland, Pittsburgh to Salt Lake City, and we invest thematically. So one of our themes is around Internet of Things, intelligent manufacturing. And so we look at the cities that are strong in that, which are Cleveland, Ann Arbor, and Denver, if you can believe it. We make investments there. The investments that we make in Austin are around DevOps, so development operations. So we're currently an investor in Dapple here. We did the Furnace software investment a while back, a number of other deals, but also retail and brand technology and marketing technology. So we're one of the investors in Trendkite. That's a fast-growing company here locally. And so we try to look at how cities have been successful previously, where are those analogs of success for venture-backed companies that got acquired, and that's typically how we kind of follow our themes. So that's kind of my background. And in my spare time, I spend a lot of time helping build community. So I'm currently trying to launch a similar effort to what Josh and Sam and Bill and everyone did here at Capital Factory. Josh and Melanie are both helping us out. It's going to be an organization called The Station. One of the things about HTC is that they help a certain type of entrepreneur very well. But this new wave of entrepreneurs, a lot of people call them millennials, but it's entrepreneurs in my mind building software very capital efficiently with a lean startup model. The older incubators and accelerators, they just don't seem to interface well with that way of thinking. So we are getting ready to launch next year a large co-working center, moving a number of startup development organizations, including SURGE Accelerator and some others into it. And hopefully try to build some startup density like you have here. So we're very jealous of Austin's strengths. We come here all the time, make investments, and also try to convince people to move to Houston. That's very, very difficult. Although I love Houston as a place to live, but to start a company, it's a challenge. Is that good?
Yeah, thank you.
You're
Yeah.
welcome.
You covered a lot of my questions.
Oh, did I?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so can you tell us about the first investment that you made?
First investment that I made. Yeah, the first investment I made personally, in Mercury Fund or previous to that?
Just in your career.
Okay, first investment I made in my career was a doozy. First investment in Mercury Fund is a company called Alert Logic. Anybody familiar with Alert Logic here? Yeah, so they're the leader in SaaS security for cloud environments. So you go onto AWS, you need your environment to be secure, PCI or other reasons, we're a checkbox. So we're the number one AWS add-ons. But that's a company that has just crossed 100 million recurring revenue. So that was my first Mercury investment, so I did pretty well there. My first investment, though, was a company called Advanced Reality. What Advanced Reality did back in 2000 was they took a legacy software application and they built essentially a software development kit or SDK that you could download and try to fit into that application, and it made the application real-time collaborative. So they did this, and we had bolt-ons for Excel and PowerPoint. We had a bolt-on for the web. So think about how people collaborate now on Google Apps or other types of applications. This company was doing that back in 2000. And what's the problem with 2000? There were no millennials, right? Millennials are the first generation who wants to work collaboratively and sees the ability of doing that, both because of remote workers and everything else. So this company was way ahead of its time, and that's how I met my partner, Dan. He had spun it out of Rice University. He was the interim CEO. My fund invested behind it, and we tried to resuscitate the company. It was on life support 2 or 3 different times. Kept on putting money behind it with different business models, but it eventually just didn't take. And I learned a lot of lessons there, but it was just a huge failure, just way before its time.
So what did that experience, talking about the lessons you learned, what did that teach you?
You know, it was more of a science project looking for a problem to be solved. It was a solution, it was a walking solution. And they tried to apply the solution first to a radiology application called Stentor, which was very popular for radiologists that were remote to look at radiographs and basically provide a clinical opinion on it. That was great. It was very difficult to sell into the medical device and the hospital market. They then were looking for other problem sets for which to solve with the science experiment. And you know, nothing against core innovation. I mean, we fund a lot of university research and spin-outs in our fund. But you really need to be solving someone's problem. You really need to solve, in my mind, prove that someone will pay you that that problem has been solved, and then that can be repeatable. And so that was probably the number one, lesson I learned from that deal. Also, that failure is okay. You know, I'm paid to fail 50% of the time. It's really hard for as a VC to kind of get over that. But those VCs that can walk away from their failures early and not be emotionally invested with a relationship with the entrepreneur and the team that you helped build, they tend to be the most successful VCs. And they may not be the nicest ones, but their returns tend to be much higher.
What's the one factor that's been the most influential in helping you throughout your career identify which companies you want to work with? Like, do you base it on the team, the founders, their product? What does that look like?
Yeah, it's great. So when I was working at the incubator HTC, I would bring in VCs and other entrepreneurs all the time to do a lot more than I did in helping them mentor these companies. And when I sat back and listened to people who had helped, launch Austin Ventures and Seven Rows and all these, these great funds, they always talked about team and people first. End of story. But when we launched our fund, for some reason, my partner Dan and I were like, you know what, we're going to go after product. We think product is the way to win. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs and a lot of VCs think that today, right? If you can find product market fit, that should be the way to win. However, based upon the success ratio of our first funds, looking at when we've needed to bring CEOs in, when we've had to do drastic means to resuscitate a company and what's succeeded and what's failed, the deals that tech was right, people were wrong, they tend to not be the best deals in the fund. They tend to be the ones that fail early. So we have switched that. Look, your product market fit can be great, your product idea can be wonderful, but we need to have an entrepreneur who is a team player first and foremost. Now, we aren't like Andreessen Horowitz or other funds that say, we're going to fund the person who can take it all away. there just aren't a lot of analogs of that in the middle of the country. I mean, you get to different stages and people have different skill sets. We want entrepreneurs that can stay with the business the entire time. And we tend to fund product or engineering-minded entrepreneurs because we think that's the asset at the end of the day, but it's that person. And so we really spend a lot of time developing the relationship, where sometimes we may be ready to invest in 3 or 4 weeks based upon the product diligence and the market diligence and our customer calls. But we need to spend a longer time with the entrepreneur to make sure that the personality fit is right. And it's not just as the entrepreneur to raise their hand and say, I'm ready to move, let's bring somebody else in, let's bring my mentor, I'll move into a visionary role or whatever. It's when we're in the foxhole every single week for 8 to 10 years, right? I mean, when this entrepreneur spends more time with me than their wife or girlfriend or partner, that personality fit's got to be there. And so you would never necessarily pick someone that you're going to spend 10 to 15 years of your life with after a 2-month diligence period, right? You tend to spend a little bit more time, unless some of you have found a quick partner, a quick wife, and got married in Vegas, right? You know, the shotgun wedding. You know, that doesn't work in venture capital, partly because there is no divorce mechanism outside of removing you or stopping to fund the company, which means failure. And so if you think about it in those parameters, it all comes down to people.
So people, and then do you tend to go towards people that have a certain type of background? Like, is it more technical in nature?
Yeah, and you know, a lot of people I think take the easy way out and say they need to have a technical or engineering background. Mine's been a little bit more refined than that. You know, pure engineering backgrounds I think make great founders, but I think it's those founders that have transcended from actually coding to building product, right? There's a difference. If we're investing in a platform that doesn't have any consumer or operational user interface, then fine, not a problem. If it's a big data platform, crunching numbers, doing things, that's great. But most of the time we're investing in companies that there is some person actually dealing with the software. And you know, I think everyone's worked with great product people and everyone's worked with not so great product people. And I think a lot of engineers have tried to make themselves into product people, and I think some have made that leap, and others I think it's much more difficult. Because I think there's a sixth sense to product that a few people have, and I've seen these people out there, and they're wonderful to work with. So that's the number one piece. Like if we can find an entrepreneur who's very gifted at understanding people, high EQ on the product side, and then they're an engineer, oh my God, that's great. And we take that any day of the week over a product person who is moving into kind of the business area. Because the business side of things is really secondary to us. You don't need to have a business person to sell software and get cash out of somebody else. We're big believers in that. We'll put that in place, but we really think that being efficient and just getting there with a product person who can present well or an engineer who can present well, and finding that product market fit and finding that you can actually get money out of people, whether it's online or in person, it's really the key.
So how do these companies find you, or how do you find them?
Good question. So we've been doing this now for 10 years, and I've been doing it for investing for 16. And so a lot of people know us. And so a lot of it just comes in directly through people that we've met through the years. We love second-time and third-time entrepreneurs because most of the time we're not going to invest in the business. We see 3,000 to 4,000 deals a year, and that's an actual PowerPoint coming through the system, not just people kind of shaking our hand. And we'll do maybe 5 investments. So the numbers are really low. But we love meeting people because people learn from their mistakes, and then they learn from their mistakes on someone else's dime, which is even better, right? And it's great. Even if they have great success, if the deal doesn't fit our theme, and if the timing's not right with our fund or where the fundraising is, it's really difficult to kind of make that line. But if we haven't met you before, the best way to find us is typically figuring out who that warm introduction should be. So in Austin, it's either coming through somebody that we know at Capital Factory, or someone we know if you're more of a science-oriented deal, like at ATI or the UT system. It can be the accounting firms we've worked with. We've worked with all the major venture banks. And so those are the groups that when they call and they say, hey, we have a new client, or we've met someone that you should meet, that we really stand up and take attention. It's too difficult for us to truly take a cold email or a cold call seriously. And the reason is, if there's a warm intro where someone can vouch for that person's background, it doesn't have to work with them. At least they've worked with them on some instance, not necessarily long term. Those are the ones that we're typically going to say, yeah, we'll kind of dig in. Now, if your deal is a direct hit with one of our investment themes, we always want to know more about you. and we'll definitely take a call, or if we're in town, take a meeting. But it's typically that known resource of people. Now, another way that people do it, the most resourceful entrepreneurs, if they don't know me, or they don't know one of my partners, this is probably true of any VC fund that you try to get in front of, you figure out where they're going to speak, like this, you come, and then you come up and you try to get a business card, and you say, hey, I'm working on something interesting, I saw some investments on your site that are similar. Are you still interested in that investment thing? The other way is going through our site, finding the companies like AlertLogic, and then reaching out to the founders of these other companies, whether they're Austin, Houston, or otherwise, Ann Arbor, or Boulder, or Denver, reaching out to those entrepreneurs and saying, hey, because entrepreneurs always want to help each other out, right? As a VC, I always want to be responsive, and I always want to give advice. It's just difficult for me because of the amount of email and LinkedIn and Twitter requests I get all the time. But entrepreneurs typically will always help someone else. And so going to an entrepreneur that's already in the portfolio and asking, hey, what's the best way to get in front of Blair, or Blair's partner, Aziz Golani, or someone else in the portfolio, or in the fund, that's usually the best route.
Thank you. So what advice would you give to somebody with an idea for, say, like a tech startup?
So software specifically, it's probably the same advice that any startup that says comes to Capital Factory or enters an accelerator gets. Spend as little as possible getting that first, alpha or beta up and running. This whole product market fit concept, right? It's a cute name, but it's, solve a problem and get someone to pay for it. Pretty easy. There's a lot of models out there where people aren't paying, and that's fine. Just be real upfront about it. But getting a software company off the ground is just get traction. We hear a lot of complaints all throughout the middle of the U.S., but in Austin too, that there's not enough venture capital. We kind of push back and say, well, look, there may not be enough seed venture capital, but the later stages of venture capital are really looking for traction, right? The seed investment really backs the person, they back the idea, and they give guidance around how to get that traction so that then someone like us, who's more traditionally a Series A investor, will come in and invest. But getting that initial market traction is key. What we look for more than anything, are SaaS startups. We do about 70% investment in SaaS and software. That SaaS, we have about 5 SaaS themes, but none of them are direct to consumer. They're all B2B or B2B2C. So it's kind of a good thing to kind of know, about us. But when we're looking at a new SaaS deal, like say TrendKite, before we backed Eric Huddleston when he had joined with Matt and AJ, the founders there, what we wanted to know was how many customers, what have you learned about your customers? Have you hired any sales associates? How quickly did that sales associate or account executive come up to speed to where you could hire another one and have some idea of the quota the person should be paying and how quickly that salesperson paid for themselves? SaaS is all about the data, it's all about metrics. And so the closer you can get to seeing some semblance of metrics, the closer you're going to get to getting that Series A investment.
So it sounds like you're really looking for people that have that, not only have the background and they're the type of person that you want, but really have that traction.
Yeah, when we first started the fund, we were all about seed investing, and we'll still do, maybe 8 to 10 seed deals per fund, and half of those will transform into Series A investments. But they really have to be a direct fit in our theme and be an entrepreneur that we've known before. The great thing for venture investors in this environment, kind of a bad thing for entrepreneurs, is you guys have so many options for seed capital, right? You have AngelList, you have all these other crowdfunding platforms, you've got all the angel networks that exist in Texas, you've got the Capital Factory program, you've got a number of smaller micro-sized funds that want to invest in those seed deals. Because there's so much seed capital, larger funds like us and the bigger funds, we tend to wait for the market to determine the winner, not the seed money. The seed money just gets those winners noticed earlier because the data starts to show itself, right? It's the signal from the noise. And so in our themes, we tend to wait and see those deals kind of as they approach. Now, if it's something that just makes so much sense, then we'll tend to put a little bit of money in just to have a toehold to be able to do that new investment because deals are competitive, especially in Austin. But that tends to be the case.
So you're a big believer in accelerator programs.
We are. And so I helped co-found an accelerator program in Houston called SURGE. That's for energy software startups. And we've been really active in helping to back accelerators, mostly financially, but also as mentors and so forth. So We helped back a group called Accelerate Labs, which is now TechStars Chicago. We were one of the few venture firms to cut a check for TechStars Austin. Really excited when TechStars came to town. We believe accelerators are great, not necessarily because they take a company and kind of launch them, but they take individuals like you that are looking for help, mentorship, and support, and they put them through a personality profile. The data that we get from mentors at accelerators about you guys is awesome. Who's easy to work with, who pivoted without losing a hitch, who's there working all night, who's resourceful, who really needs some assistance, but it's a diamond in the rough. And those are the things that we're looking for, because again, to us it's all about the people. Because your deal either fits our theme or it doesn't. You're either going after a big market or you're not. And so once that is determined, and once we have an understanding of how much capital you want to raise, then it's all about, is there a fit, right? Is there a fit between my personality, one of my partners, and you? And those accelerators in that 3-month period, you can tell a lot about people. I mean, it's like watching a reality TV show. I mean, you can sit back and watch that reality TV show and be like, I would not be that person's friend. Or, wow, that person's someone I want to get to know. Or, you know what? We would probably butt heads. And it's less about, it's not bad people versus good people. It's all personalities. Like, there's other VCs out there that know a lot more than me and are a lot more successful than me. But the more important thing is their personality is different. And so depending upon the way you work and the way you interact, right? Are you a person that needs to be on the phone, who needs to vent once a week? Are you a person that wants to text? Are you the type of entrepreneur that will text or message me in Slack, and before I can respond, you've sent 2 other complete diatribes to where my mind is racing, right? I had to learn how to respond that way. And not only one, but I've got like 6 or 7 kind of going on at once. And so there's some VCs that won't put up with that, right? They want a meeting, they want a call, they want this. There's others that are just totally relaxed, even more so than me. And so you gotta kind of find that fit. I think that's the most important thing in finding that capital partner.
So it sounds like you're pretty hands-on with the companies that you work with.
We are, and for us, I think a lot of VCs say, hey, you have to be hands-on because it's part of your investment. There's goods and bads of that, right? Everyone's heard the stories about VCs that are too hands-on, they're almost micromanaging. When a company is at the seed stage, we try not to be that hands-on. Like, we're there to make intros, help build teams, do those types of things. But the only thing in our mind that can help a seed stage company is the market. And so having a monthly board meeting with financial projections and all this rigmarole that a board puts you through isn't that helpful if you haven't defined that the market wants your product. And so the market is going to drive you in all these gyrations, right? They're going to determine pivots, not VCs. So we want all that to be worked out, at least to a degree, before we get involved. But we do get very, very active. One of the things that we're able to do as being a fund with a larger region than say just local is we've just got great access to companies and corporations and knowing what they want to buy, what they want to buy either as a product or what they want to buy as an acquisition. And so we want to help a company when it's really helpful to get in front of P&G or Kroger or Macy's or advertising agencies or GE or those other types of groups. And early on, it's sometimes difficult to navigate those bigger groups. You need to find the early adopters. But no, we get pretty active. But it's as active as the company wants. And so another interview tactic I always tell entrepreneurs is quiz your VC or your capital provider around how often do you expect to meet? How often do you think we should meet? Are you going to open up your Rolodex to talent? I can't tell you how many investors want to see you hit milestones before they start opening up their Rolodex. And if that's the case, then they're probably investing too early, right? Because you have all these resources. That's one of the reasons you bring capital in, but you're like, wait a minute, you're not going to be receiving a GE until I do what? So get all that kind of out front, right? But also, I think it's, certain people have certain types of networks that'll help you at certain points in time. When a company gets to growth stage, that's a point in time where if you're at an 8-10 million run rate and you're growing, I can be helpful, but not nearly as helpful as, say some of the guys, over at Austin Ventures who took companies to 100 million in revenue, or some of the funds on the coast. So it's just really important to make sure that fit is there and what the skill set is and what that looks like.
Yeah, so that has to be challenging for a lot of entrepreneurs, right? Because if they've got somebody that's willing to invest in them, but maybe they want somebody that's worked with bigger companies. Like, how do they make that decision and weigh that?
Yeah, if you're running out of capital, like beggars can't be choosers, right? I'm always telling people just take the money, take the money. However, if you can take less money during that, it's really hard to take the wrong money when you need a lot. So if you are beyond the Series A stage and you need 5 to 7 million, you're going into that growth mode. Look, you're there, right? I hope you're successful enough to get that round closed. It's really tough to take money from a group that you just don't have a cultural and kind of EQ fit with. I'm always telling entrepreneurs, just wait. If you can't find it now, just take a bridge and wait. We do that with our portfolio all the time. When you're earlier, it doesn't hurt as much to take 3, 4, or 500,000 from someone that may not be symbiotic with what you want to do. What you want to know, though, is am I going to be able to get my job done? Which is I'm heads down, here, there, wherever your office, and I need the market to make the determination about how good of a job I'm doing. Sometimes with classic angel investors, they want to get a little bit more involved because that's the way it was done 10, 15, 20 years ago. Times have changed. If you look at how companies are successful, they're successful by getting in front of a bunch of different people with a bunch of different views and being able to slice through that to get advice and then kind of going out and putting it into practice. They're not successful by having 2-3 hour meetings every week, giving homework assignments. Because all that matters is the market uptake for your product good enough.
Gotcha.
That's my theme with entrepreneur.
Sure. Okay. And so I'm sure this is a range, but how much equity would somebody? How much should they plan on giving up?
You see, I changed my seat position for that one, right? It's kind of uncomfortable. No, we're really open about this. When it's a seed stage deal, like a convertible note or seed investment, we're not as concerned about the equity. It's more of a toehold to be there for the Series A. The deal is so compelling that we want to make sure that we put our best foot forward relationship-wise so that we are your first choice to either lead that deal or syndicate within that deal. If it's a Series A, we typically are looking for a minimum of 20% ownership. We really want to get 25 to 30%, but it's hard, right? So when we did Trendkite was a deal that Silverton had seeded at Dream, the first Dream class here in Austin. Eric Huddleston was joining the team, Morgan Flager, who was terrific. Austin's really lucky to have Morgan. They both called to say, hey, we want to take a look at it. And so Silverton and we sat down. We both were the same type of fund, right? We both want 20%. So we both said, okay, we want this percentage during the Series A. We'll both do the Series B, and we both can get to that 20% range. When you have a couple of funds that are in the same round, we all want to get to 20% eventually because we know we'll get diluted in the 10 to 15% range if you're truly exceptional and sell for 100, 150 million, 200 million. Because what we need is we need every deal, and you've heard this before, to be a 10x type of a deal. Right, so if you look at fund economics, you take 10 investments that I'll make in my fund, 3 of those are going to fail, no money back. 3 of them, you may get your money back up to about 3x, and so the last 3 to 4, you need to have be 10x returners. If we do that over a 10-year period, we give our investors around a 20% net internal rate of return. And giving our investors a 20% net means I get to raise another fund, and our team gets to live another day. And so one of the things that entrepreneurs, that they're not familiar with, that's an oddity, is if an entrepreneur comes in and says, look, I can give you a 3x return on my deal, almost guaranteed, we will still walk that deal because we need every company to have the potential to return 10x because we know only 3 of 10 will. And so I think funds get in trouble when they start looking at lower return thresholds because those return thresholds are going to happen regardless. But when you do that, you're cutting into your overall return. And I think that's why a lot of venture funds, they just don't return very well historically. Now, over the last 3 to 4 years, they've returned exceptionally well, especially on the coast because of all these unicorns and these SaaS IPOs. But even that is coming back to Earth.
Thank you for that. Sorry, I need you.
Oh, no, it's fine. It's fine. But it's always interesting because that's what every entrepreneur wants to know, right? Yeah, you get along with me, you're going to help. How much you can take? Right, that's the number one thing. I always tell entrepreneurs, every single round you do, expect to give up 20% to a third every round, even your seed round. So if you do 3 rounds, it's just a third, a third, a third. And everyone's like, well, what's the difference between 20% and 30% or 33%? And I'm like, demand. If you have a lot of demand, you can get that down to 20%. If you don't have a lot of demand, you go about a third. And that's just very, very consistent. If you're dealing with angels, they may be less price sensitive because they don't have the thresholds in order to make the returns work on their overall fund. And if somebody wants 40, 45%, you got to scratch your head and be like, wait a minute. That's actually not typical. You're taking too much equity away from the founders to make it worth their while by the time the equity comes along. But there's a balance, and so historically it's been around that 20, 33%. And that 30%, it's not just me. It may be me and another fund, depending on how much money is being raised.
So the other part of how you're seeing deals structured, what do you see as the breakdown in ownership and equity between like if there's a CEO, a CTO, investors are involved, and then there's like employees and a development team?
Yeah, it all depends on who the founder was. So if you take a product or engineering-based founder, when they bring a CEO in at the Series A, so you raise anywhere from 2 to 5 million. Series A's in Texas are still 2 to 3 million. They're still small on the coast. That CEO a lot of times is going to want somewhere between 5 and 10%. Again, the range is based upon the demand for the deal. If it's a hot deal, we've got CEOs for 5% of the A. If it's not, it still has some things to learn. It's usually 8 to 10%. A lot of times, entrepreneurs will bring that CEO in prior to the round, because with a lot of VCs, they want to see that business leader, that proven CEO in, and a lot of times the CEO will say, okay, I'm going to negotiate my equity prior to the A. I will help you get the A on board, and then here's where I'm going to be pegged in. That's happened on a number of occasions. So that was the case at Trendkite. There was a deal called Furnace Software. Many of you may be familiar with one of our first deals here in Austin that Larry Warnoff led. Daniel and Robert, the founders there, brought him in, and it was essentially equity, kind of post that A. What I always tell entrepreneurs is after 2 rounds, right? So you do your seed round, put that aside. Doesn't really count, it's too small. So that seed round typically will convert into your A. If your A round is 3 million, typically that 3 million will come in and we'll get 30% of your company. And so the next round, where you want to raise 5 to 7, hopefully that'll come in, say, a 15 pre, hopefully a 20, but you're giving up again, and you're giving up somewhere between 20 and 25% of your company. As a founder, where you own 50% or more in the beginning, you really want to own at least 15% at the end. Now, there's always the exception of the Google, where you own 4 to 5, but it's of a massive pie. But I always tell founders, protect yourself, because you want to own around 15%. Otherwise, was it worth it? And the thing I find, though, is when people are starting companies, it's typically first-time founders, they'll split the pie so many times early that after that Series A, right, the Series A is coming in at 30%, so then you have 20% as your option pool, and then 50% to the founders. If each founder has 25%, if you have 2 founders, that's okay. You should end up okay. If you're doing a good job, your VCs will not top you up totally, will give you more options along the way. But if you have 3 founders, and all of a sudden you're at 17, or 4 founders, and you're at 11, 12, or heaven forbid 5 founders, there's nothing wrong with having 5 founders in a company, but what happens is people tend to leave. They tend to leave with vested shares. You got to bring more shares into the picture in order to bring people in. And as a founder, you end up being bitter when you've built a $100 million company, because at the end of the day, you got 3%. And you're like, wait a minute, I'm the one who actually stayed the entire time. And even actually getting topped up, I'm only at 3. So I always warn founders, and we tend not to do deals that have more than 2 founders, because there's always that issue. But that's not to say if you have 2 founders and then you bring a CTO on, well, you consider a founder, but it's how many people have big chunks in the beginning, because those are the ones that have the most skin in the game, and they need to be there at the end, and we want to be happy. Like, there's nothing worse in our mind than a company sell for over $100 million, and the founders walk away unhappy, right? It's one thing about the employees, because I think employees a lot of times, if it's their first or second deal, if you get a quarter point or a half a point, you think that's going to be worth something. Your expectations may be less than the founder itself. But even then, I think employees at these startups just don't get paid enough when there's a great outcome, because there's just so many venture dollars that have to come to these deals in order to get to the exit.
Sure. Okay, one more question, and then I'm going to open it up to the audience.
Okay.
So how would an entrepreneur in a startup company position themselves best for an exit?
Good question. Early on, or after they've been doing it for a while?
Can can you kind of touch on both?
Yeah, sure. So if you've been doing this for a while and you've raised seed capital, the thing we're always preaching to our entrepreneurs that we put Series A money and beyond is we have this whole concept of biz dev to corp dev. We always worry when a startup hasn't been having strategic discussions early when they're not for sale. Because by the time you either need to drive a sale, either because your investors are pushing for it, you get tired, or there's some other reason, you haven't built up this Rolodex of companies who know what you're doing and will talk about it behind closed doors. Case in point, I really want Trendkite to be in front of NASDAQ and a bunch of different companies out there that are doing interesting things, not only to put partnership opportunities, but when a company out there is talking in a strategic boardroom about saying, you know what, we really need to innovate, we need to have a product in this category, who knows of anybody? If you're not one of the first companies mentioned, or if your page rank isn't up there, then you don't even become part of the conversation. And the worst thing in the world is to have the best product out there and not be known because you haven't spent money on marketing, which most teams don't in the early days. But the way you get around that is once or twice a year, getting on a plane, getting in a car, and going and visiting these companies who you think would be good partners, either for real or kind of for real. And you've got 10 to 12 potential suitors that you could see, is there a fit for me and my team there? Are they interested? Most of these groups that are really interested by year 2 will say, are you interested in strategic investment or a strategic alternative? And it is amazing the companies that do that, they end up with much better outcomes because there's optionality at the end and you get people fighting for it. Whenever a company wants to sell and they need to hire an investment banker and they need to run a process, and that investment banker is calling people out of the blue, unless your company has phenomenal metrics, is known to all because of your online presence or your earned media presence, or they just happen to get lucky with a strategic initiative within a Fortune 500 company at the same time it's being called, which never happens, you're just kind of dead in the water. The other thing too, go back to the early stages. When you're talking to VCs, talking to seed investors, and also trying to get some of your first customers, think about your first customers as if you had to do an acqui-hire. If you had to sell because you can't find seed capital and you want a good home for your team or yourself for a year or so forth, why not call up companies early and talk about what you're doing, and that within 6 to 12 months you'll be ready to partner. The companies that do that the best, which I think are on the West Coast because they go to Google, go to Facebook, and all those other places, they end up being the ones that get acqui-hired. Acqui-hires do not take place with somebody picking up the phone randomly and saying, we want to buy that company. And so whether it's early or late, you just have to figure out what that conversation is. We always like to have companies having at least 6 homes that they actually know the company on a first name basis, and they've actually talked with that founder.
Great advice, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, so I want to open it up to the audience for questions. Who has questions for Blair? Yes.
So you made a comment earlier about big market, and you would only invest in a company that you would consider a big market. What size does that look like to you?
Yeah, so to our fund, we like market sizes that are $500 million or above. If they're less than that, they tend to not be big enough to have multiple competitors. If you're doing something good, people will compete, right? And they tend to not be large enough to actually get a great acquisition price, which would satisfy our needs. We are only looking for investments that have the potential to sell for $100 million or above. Now, if I invest in your company, we go out and sell for $50 million, and I do a 3X, awesome, great, high five, and we'll try to back you in your next deal. But it needs to have that potential.
Okay.
If you have a small market, right, $250 million, how do you get sold for $100 million? It just doesn't happen. Now, we also want that market to be growing, right?
Yep.
Case in point being, if you are a better software analytics provider for terrestrial broadcast television, massive market, are we interested? Our fund? No, because that's a market that's declining. So we want there to be a big upside. Now, the next question entrepreneurs typically ask was, all right, how do you define that size? You guys probably heard this. This is the bottoms up approach, right? If you are selling back office healthcare software for hospitals, that is a better way to do X. I want to know how much does someone pay for it? How much are they willing to pay for it? Is a land and expand opportunity? How many hospitals are there in the US? Do that math, that's my market, simple as that. And that's typically what we run through. And if the entrepreneur doesn't have all that data, we tend to do it ourselves. But that's the number one thing we really want to know from an entrepreneur. And a lot of times your opportunity is emerging. But even something like, say something emerging like Slack, right? When Slack went out to raise venture money, it looked at the market for collaboration tools. And that market was a little wonky, right? There was SharePoint and some other things. But everyone knew it was more than $1 billion in sales. So if it's big enough, you can basically point to it and say, I'm going after that. All right, awesome, massive. But when we did a TrendKite investment, how large is the market for PR software that aggregates earned media mentions? So we had to look at PR as a whole and the spend being done there, and how could we be efficient, and we'd have to lob off, some of that. So there's different ways of getting around it, but we like $500 million. Now, a lot of funds want $1 billion or more. And even now, a lot of later stage funds on the coasts during the whole unicorn era, they want $10 billion or more. They say, hey, look, your concierge service that you're putting together to deliver food, it's got to be $20 billion because we want to go for it, and we want the markets to be able to sustain $1 billion valuation on this massive $30 billion market. So it's really all about what you're doing and the niche that you're in. But I would say for the venture firms that are active in Texas, that $500 million to $1 billion addressable is what they're looking for.
We're at 34 billion for alternative health.
Perfect. Yeah, 34 billion, there's no calculation needed. So.
Okay. Yes.
So Blair, Paul Graham of Y Combinator put out a list a few years ago of companies that he liked to fund that he didn't see out in the market. Do you have any company market problems that you would like to be funding the company that solves those problems? Like, Paul Graham put out this list years ago.
Yeah, great question. I don't want to take too long answering that. It's not that we have any secrets, but let me talk about a couple of our investment themes and what we're not seeing.
Yeah.
One of our investment themes is around the convergence of DevOps with cloud technology and big data. And how can companies use that, much more effectively. We are really interested in how those types of technologies can be used in oil and gas, utilities, and other industrial type companies. If you look at big data solutions, they typically have been used in more of the forward-thinking industries, like anything marketing-oriented, financial services, high tech. We're really interested in heavy industry, which predominantly is in the middle of the country, and what are those interesting big data solutions in and around development operations that can be applied there. They typically aren't the early adopters, but their data needs are huge. Another area that we're very interested in is around kind of this industrial Internet of Things concept, but applied to intelligent manufacturing. Again, with industrial companies in the middle of the country, how can you find technologies that leverage sensor data around a manufacturing plant, make sense of that, and provide really interesting opportunities to improve throughput and other dynamics. We've made some investments in these spaces, but we still want to see more. One that's not a theme per se, but we're interested in, because of our security background and alert, we don't see enough of, is mobile security. We just are just blown away that people haven't solved the mobile security problem. We don't even know how to solve it, right? Should it be at the carrier level? Should it be at some other level? Should it be an application by application? That's another area that we don't see a lot of innovation around, but we're very, very interested in seeing.
What kind of mobile security problem are you referring to specifically?
Really, there's just way too many ways for people to get your data on a mobile device. Some people know this, a lot of people don't. Don't even get me started about the wallet with smart chips in it, right? It just doesn't make any sense at all. There needs to be something in my mind on your device that can tell when you're being hacked. Like, why don't our phones go off with a massive bing when someone is trying to hack your system? And not only that, if your phone is on you all the time, why can't something go off with a massive ding when someone's trying to hack your wallet, right? Or other things. I mean, there's no reason for this stuff to take place. I just don't think people have figured out how to solve these problems. So I think Austin's the perfect place to do it with all of the semiconductor and chip background and so forth.
Yeah, I get more of a warning of a tornado in the area than I do someone hacking my phone, right?
Exactly, or your laptop, right? There's so many things that are around you at all time. There should be ways to be able to do that, and just not there yet.
Any other questions? Sure.
Another numbers question. So you mentioned trying to get your alpha or beta to market with as little money as possible, like especially in the tech space. What do you consider a little? Because in the dev world, it doesn't get you too far with a lot of.
Yeah, this is the challenge, right? When I say that, I'm somewhat cautious because if you can raise $1 million, get your product out there, awesome, right? We're not going to ding you because of that. Where you may get dinged is that then needs to convert into a round. And are you willing to have a valuation that gets us 20% in that Series A with such a large convertible bridge? That's really how to look at it. Now, backing up, you want to dilute yourself as little as possible. When you think about that alpha, right, you haven't necessarily gotten money out of someone, but you have this proof of concept up and running so you can then go and start pitching to people. It's tough, right? People in engineering disciplines have a leg up because they don't have to pay for it. What I always tell people is, look, you can outsource your dev during that period, but you better bring it in-house because no one will get to do your Series A unless you have all the engineering talent internally. When people go out and do that alpha, 50 to 100K is what we think is reasonable and kind of makes sense. These seed rounds with these convertible caps, 250 to 750, once you get to $1 million, it starts to become a little unwieldy. We have no problem with a bunch of investors being in there. It comes down to the dilution aspect of what you're doing. And most of these seed rounds, they aren't enough to get you to where you need to be most time. And so people do C pluses, and so they're doing these bridges on top of bridges. And a lot of times, like with VCs, if there's that much complexity in your cap table already, we tend just not even to look at the deal and just walk away. And it has nothing to do with you or the product. It's just too complicated. And if we're seeing 100, 150 deals a week, we'll just wait for something that's a little bit cleaner. So we always tell people, look, if it's taking you $1 million to find a product market fit, you're not going to have the same problem, the right problem.
Yes.
So this one may not be applicable to you in particular, but maybe you can help me out with something here. So my business is for skateboarders and snowboarders, BMX riders, okay? Not something that would really probably be the type of demographic that you'd want to invest in. But I know for some people, they would be really passionate about the same thing that I'm passionate about, right? How does somebody go about like you said, you can't take someone seriously, really, if you just cold calls you or something like that. How is there a good way to find and approach someone who you really have no network interaction with?
Great question. I think you, with that special of a deal, right? And what can you talk about what you're doing for that community, just real briefly?
It's an app that introduces you to people to ride with and the best locations to go ride in your area. Okay,
kind of like a social app for enthusiasts.
Yeah, it's like dating, but not dating.
Okay, is it Tinder-esque where you can look at your skate park and do the left or right? Or?
It's not like a swiping idea, but on the back end, it's really
okay. So I think AngelList has been the greatest platform for entrepreneurs like you to find people who are searching for deals around certain affinity groups and certain types of entrepreneurs. When you put your deal out on AngelList, odds are, if you don't have an angel already, and there's certain angels that kind of lead these syndicates, it's going to be tough to get funding. But that is the cold call, right? And they've allowed for people that don't have a large Rolodex or kind of first-time entrepreneurs to put the deal out there and then blast a number of people who basically want to know more about your deal. So people who are interested in consumer products or sports and recreation or social, a number of things would kind of hit that category. So it's a perfect opportunity to go and do that. The other thing, though, is I try one of the crowdsourcing sites like Indiegogo. Because what you're doing is a passionate fan base The biggest question, if we did consumer products, right? Let's not consumer products, more consumer software. And if we did social, okay? I would question your business model by saying, all right, how many people out there would actually want to use this? And you'd come back with saying, well, hey, I've got 10,000 people through beta just in Austin alone. I'd be like, oh, that's pretty sweet, cool. But if people really want this, I mean, the greatest market leveler known to man is crowdfunding sites. Get people to build your product for you. If it's anything that's a wearable or things like that, we always question why entrepreneurs don't go that route. I think a lot of times you're nervous, right? Because if the market doesn't respond positively, you're kind of done, right? But if they do, you're not diluted, you've built up your market, and you can kind of learn mistakes on someone who's buying your products and they go rather than your investor. So that's the way I would take your product to market.
So can I follow up that with another question?
Yeah, please.
So you were also talking about how you should be thinking really early on and networking with folks for your exit strategy, whatever that may be. So would it be a bad idea, instead of looking for particular angel investors, to be talking with companies that this would be a good part of their portfolio to have?
I definitely would, and I think, and even reaching out to people like Tony Hawk, right? Reach out to these people in that community and say, hey, I'm doing this. Here's the traction I've got, or here's the interest. I'd love to get your feedback on it. And if we get to a certain size, would love to look at you as a partner, either as a sponsor or doing something at events, you name it. I mean, look, if you think about where you're headed, there's little, if any, innovation in that area, right? So all of these companies that sponsor skate meetups and other things, I would think they'd be all over this. Or what you would learn is they would probably respond and say, hey man, awesome, however, there's 4 other companies out there doing this, and there's one we've partnered with, so we can't partner up. And so you may learn more about competition than you know already.
Sure, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yes.
Just quickly, I was wondering, when you decide that you want to invest in a company, how does that process usually go for you in that company? Do you find that you go to a kind of a formal pitch relatively quickly, or do you find that there tend to be a lot of informal meetings leading up to that? And do you like a business plan, or do you prefer more just a pitch deck? Just a little bit on that kind of experience.
Yeah, great question. Most of the investments that I personally have made have been off of a very casual introduction where someone has either introduced me by email, and I'll set up a 15, 20-minute time just to get a sense of it. What I will say too, though, and I know a lot of VCs feel this way, don't be shy about sending your PowerPoint beforehand. PDF it up, right? So they can't jack around with it or take some stuff out of it and use it for other companies or whatever. And again, they're not trying to steal your idea. It's just a lot of times you have better presentation skills in our companies where, oh wow, that's awesome. PDF it up, right? Keep all your stuff. But then send it over and then let them use that as a way to do Q&A. The best way to get my attention is stopping me at a thing like this and saying, hey, I think I have an idea of your themes. I'm doing this. Is that interesting? And I'm like, yeah, that is interesting. Let's talk about it for 20 minutes. Send me over whatever deck you have. You can't embarrass yourself if your deck isn't polished enough or if your company isn't far enough along. VCs want to know about stuff early, especially those of us that invest at the early stages, because we want to see where you are today, what your questions are, how resourceful you've been, and then how we can help, right? Because if you're within my theme, I want you to get to a good point so that I can invest in you. I'm not trying to say no. I'm trying to say no quickly because I have a lot of stuff on the plate. But if you're in my theme, I want to do a deal. So I'm kind of like, hey, you know what? I've seen this before, and you should check this deal and this deal and this deal, which will be helpful. But then think about this, because if you solve this problem, if you can extract this out of Kroger, out of Walmart, then it'd be really, really interesting. And then you'll come back to me with, that's great, do you have an intro that you can make for me? And eventually we'll do that. And so when I'm actually working with an entrepreneur, free of charge, doing the same things I would do after I've invested, that tends to lead to an investment if the data is positive along the way. And the reason I do that with stuff in my themes, because a lot of people are like, gosh, it must take a ton of time. It takes a ton of time. But if I do that right, I can see how you and I work together, but also you're not going to go anywhere else, right? If I've already done the good work, you've done the good work, and you know there's a fit there. You may talk to other people to keep me honest on pricing, but price doesn't even come into the discussion. And so those tend to be the best deals. They tend to take 6 months to close, because there's a process to that. But again, just like your exit, right? You never want to call me when you need money in 3 months. You want to call me 9 to 12 months, and you want to call a couple of these, right? You want to find a Blair in every fund that you think you are copacetic with. Figure out who's the right fit, and then start building those relationships. And then, the best deals are ones where you can put a syndicate together for a couple of us in, so you've got more people working for you. And that tends to be the way to do it. But what really turns me off is an entrepreneur that says, you know what, I've been taught not to give you my PowerPoint pitch until I can give it to you. Because let me tell you, when you're on the phone with me, I'm not letting you give the PowerPoint pitch. I cannot sit through 20 to 30 minutes of presentation, right? I'm just like you guys, attention deficit, cannot do it. Not only that, I've seen so many pitches, you're gonna tell me something, but I'm gonna have other questions. And so it's gonna be much more informative if I can interrupt you along the way. So why not just give it to me, and I'll have my questions prepared, I'll do my homework. And then you'll say, hey, and the other thing too, right, this is a great test, think about this. If you do that, and I get on the phone, you're like, well, you've read my pitch because you asked for it. What questions do you have? What should I focus on? If I go, oh, well, why don't you go ahead and give me the pitch? It shows that, I'm not that interested. Or it may show that whatever else. I mean, it's not this sort of rude, but it may be, all right, he may not be that interested, or he's just being rude. But if I've actually read it and I have questions, I'm like, hey, let's go to slide 3. Let's talk about that market sizing again. I know you say 37 billion, but I kind of question that because these companies have kind of taken that part of the market. You're like, awesome, let's dive in there. That is so much more productive than the pitch of death.
You're not looking for a 30-minute introduction pitch. You want to dive straight in.
No, and I usually open it up with your background. I'll go on LinkedIn, I'll look at your background, I'll try to ping people who potentially know you, we have different relationships with. If you tweet a lot, I'll look at your Twitter stream and see what you do. If you work all the time, people that tweet about work a lot and are constantly into it, those are people we tend back. This engulfs my life, right? My free time I spend working with startup development organizations, like mentoring, helping startups, right? I want to find startups like that, and you only know that by having this casual conversation. If it's a formal pitch, then what you get at the end is a no, and then it kind of walks away. You want to know that up front. Why waste your time? You want to do pitch practice? Go find a friend, right? It's not. VCs aren't the best group to do pitch practice with anyhow. The best pitch practice is someone that actually likes your deal, is knowledgeable about your space, and asks you really insightful questions that challenge what you've done already. That's what's going to make you improve over time. Anyone can be a good presenter, but only a few people can be great, resourceful entrepreneurs. Sorry, that's probably too much. That's all my secrets. So.
That's great. No, we appreciate you being here.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you very much.
So, all right, I'm going to open it up to Joey Furman. He's going to come up for a few minutes and talk about his offering.
Well, first of all, I don't think we have clapped for our guests, so thank you very much. Very informative. Thanks for sharing your wisdom with us. So who in here has a company and wants to start their own company? Anybody? A few people? Looks like I'm at the right crowd then. A little background about myself. I grew up in Omaha, went to the University of Pennsylvania for computer science, worked at Microsoft, United States Senate, got involved in, went to Florida for the beach, worked at Morgan Stanley, Merrill Lynch, became a CFA chart holder, worked on Wall Street, went to New York, which is all great and all, but I was like, I always want to be an entrepreneur. I've been studying for 10 years, and so I finally took the plunge, and now I'm a serial entrepreneur. So I applaud all of you who are going that path. It's not an easy path, but it's very exciting. My first venture, I started a publishing company because I wrote the first personal finance adventure novel. Studying personal finance is super boring, so mine is action, humor, romance. Won a couple awards. In about a few days, I'm about to launch Biggest Fan Awards. It's an internet TV show. If you notice, there's a lot of people who claim to be the biggest fan of something, but there's no way to prove it until now. So I'm starting with the Hunger Games, we have 10 contestants, a judge, it's kind of like a American Idol type thing, and then there's tons of brands we can go to next. I've got a beta site for, it's kind of like an Amazon for mentors. You go pick your category, maybe you want to become an expert photographer, an entrepreneur, good job in finance, whatever. Lots of categories, you hire a mentor. And then I've got about 5 ideas that I'm incubating with interns because I'm an idea guy. Kind of like my long-term vision for myself is I want to be a blend between like an Elon Musk and Richard Branson. So I've got this kind of great trusted people who help me launch these businesses. That's kind of my goal. So anyway, I know a lot of stuff. And so I kind of fell into this coaching for entrepreneurs kind of thing. People who want to become one or want to become better one. And basically I do 1 hour sessions each week. I act as your accountability partner, which people really like because I give you homework and I make sure that you're always following up on your goals. I help you brainstorm, and so I can tell you about it, or I can just kind of do a case study. So there's this guy, super smart guy, had an amazing product, but he didn't really have any business sense. He was a horrible presenter. So the first thing I did is I helped him pick a better target market. So his plan was like, you want to take this great product, get into Home Depot, build this whole brand, and sell it to consumers. And I was like, that's the worst idea I've ever heard. So I found a better market for him so he can bigger sales, less work, just more scalable, and faster. Next thing, I helped him with this pitch. I've heard a lot of pitches in Austin, and a lot of them are just awful. So he started telling people about his company. They didn't understand what he was saying. Now, whenever he tells his pitch to somebody, 100% of the time they're excited about it. They want to kind of get involved. So he was very happy about that. He also wanted to get some money, but he didn't want to give them any equity. Everyone was telling him, that's impossible, you can't get any money without giving up equity. But I'm a pretty creative guy, I like problem solving, so we're trying to raise hundreds of thousands of dollars, possibly over $1 million without giving up a dime of equity, which is pretty cool. And then through some of my connections, I helped him get in front of some people, and he just closed a $10 million deal of people buying his product, which is pretty cool, so he's pretty happy. So I love working with entrepreneurs. I've got a few slots left for clients that I work with, and you all get a free 1 hour session if you want it. So I've got a sheet you have to fill out if you want to take advantage of it. Just fill it out, turn it in before you leave. My time is obviously very busy. So if you email me a week and say, hey, can I get that free session, I'll say no. So if you want it, I'll pass these out, and that's kind of what I got. So thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for coming. Thanks, Blair, again, for being here with us, and our speakers, Michelle and Joey. And we have a holiday party coming up, December 16th, that we were going to everybody can make it. If it's out there on Eventbrite, if you can't find it, feel free to email me, and I can send you the details. And then at the table in the back, as you walk through the door, there are parking passes for the garage. The parking would be $5 instead of probably $20, so make sure that you grab one of those. Thank you again.